got problems. We don't know how to solve them, but maybe talking about them in front of the world and anybody who happens to be listening in will help us out. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Jason, alongside your other host, Harold Owens III.
Hello.
And we have a very special guest today, a recurring guest on some of the earlier forms of this podcast, Sam Parchment, the oft talked about but rarely seen, or in this case heard, third roommate. Sam, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me again.
Thanks for joining us. Today, we are going to expand on conversations that we've been having off camera and off record, and just talking about like things that are quite fitting on a podcast that's named Our Public Therapy. We're talking about mental health, we're talking about goals, we're talking about like things that we've been repressing for years and have only now come to the surface because of like some sort of recent event that made us trigger it. You know, all
Light
the good
stuff. Yeah, we keep it light on
light,
this
fun,
podcast.
things that you can show to children.
Okay, so we are discussing the relationship here between goals and mental health. Is it even necessary? Can you be the happiest person on the planet, just zero goals? No plans, just living. I want to be that guy because it doesn't work for me. I got to feel like I'm making progress.
Alright, so let me throw this out there. Who are some of the happiest beings on the planet?
I'd say the extremely wealthy. For some amount of time. I don't think it lasts very long, but I think for like a few days in there, they were just living it up, and then it just went all downhill from there.
Alright, Harold's theory. Sam?
I think it's either going to be, it's the extremes. It's the people who have everything, or the people who have or desire everything, or the people who have or desire nothing. Like they either got it all, so they can kind of be happy, or they got nothing, but like they don't need anything, so they can just kind of like it's the difference of like happiness and contentment. Like they can be happy, they can either be truly content and that's the best thing in the world. Or they're feeling like, okay, they've got everything and that's the best thing in the world. Like,
So both of you failed to notice that I said beings and not humans, because I think that there are very clear instances of greater happiness in non-human like existences. In the show Ted Lasso, there's a great line. It's like, be like a goldfish, happiest creature on earth because they only got a 5-second memory. So just forget what's going on every 5 seconds and live in the moment. And very few dogs are not living their best life when they got like a nice owner to take care of them. And I hate saying it this way, but when you're kind of dumb, when you're kind of just like living for like food and shelter and enjoying what you got and being content with like good company and a nap like a dog is, you're kind of living your best life. That's where happiness is maximized. Like, there was a study that was done, and it was back in the 90s, so the number has changed, but it said, like, the greatest happiness happens at around $120,000, like, for a household, about $75,000 for, like, a single income. And
So like $1 million now.
so not quite that extreme, but still something that's like
Okay.
upper middle class. Because when you're upper middle class, you got worries, but you don't have so many worries. But the fact is, the extremely wealthy are just kind of empty when you like actually go to the psychology. They have everything, but that doesn't lead to happiness. That just leads to possessions. They're all about the game, man. And the game doesn't make you happy. The game makes you that, like, green. But
Well,
the green doesn't make you happy.
I'd rather be stupid and rich, because then you got the best of both worlds.
Heck yeah.
Right, there you go.
No, and there was a great book. It might be Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but don't quote me on that. But the quote itself is like, I've been unhappy rich and I've been unhappy poor. It's better to be rich. And so, yeah, of the two extremes that Sam was talking about, it's better to have the money, but the actual, like, place where statistically and, like, through studies they've seen you to have the highest level of happiness is, like, skewed slightly towards the wealthy, but not so much that, like, you're not having that work-life balance.
So we all chose different answers, interestingly. I chose the wealthy side. Sam here says the extremes, and you said the middle.
I said the right answer, yes.
But happiness is so subjective, I guess. It'd be hard to come to a correct solution. We're just spitballing here.
Fair enough. And
how does one achieve
happiness
it?
is not like one for one with mental health, right?
No. But the lack of it can be a problem. Right? But, yeah, you don't expect to be happy all the time. But the inability to experience it, I think is... it's not even depression. There's like a separate thing for that. Just, I want to say euthymia? Euthymia? Something like that. Just the inability to experience pleasure. Not good. So, I've already mentioned a bit of what kind of makes me happy in doses, and that's steps towards goals, you know? Mm-hmm. Even if you're on a treadmill and there's a projection of your goal on the wall. Technically, you're still walking, so good on you.
Yeah, something that we've talked before about on the podcast is that your body sometimes has a hard time distinguishing between, like, you thinking about achieving a goal and you actually achieving it. So that dopamine rush happens when you just, like, think about achieving something, which is sometimes why over-planning or planning too much rather than doing can be counterproductive. It's the same reason why people can get really into, like, sports. Because the fact is, you're not winning. You're not doing anything at all. Even think about, like, fandom in other senses. Like, I'm really happy that the One Piece show is doing well. I had nothing to do with that show. I just happened to like the series. But from a brain standpoint, I'm part of the One Piece team. And so I'm happy when it's doing well. In sports, if, like, my team is doing well, then I'm really happy they're doing well. If they're doing poorly, it hurts me almost physically because mentally it's the same thing.
So in a way, you can kind of leech happiness from other successful people. You just surround yourself with successful individuals and organizations, and you can get happiness as well.
I mean, depending on how you view it, right? Well, if you view it as being on their team, absolutely. But that can also lead to jealousy, right?
Well, to be fair, for the One Piece thing, I did see recently SBS. I was like, well, they're not just my children. These characters aren't just my children because it's shared between the fans. So all those One Piece characters are also your kids too. And I suppose you can have pride that they're doing well.
I guess, but, like, I don't want to necessarily, like, take ownership of every child.
Or pay child support. There's a lot of fictional children in One Piece.
There are, like, 1,400 named characters. I don't have the funds to support that kind of child rearing.
Even if it was just $1 a day to feed these children.
I'm just saying, man, like, I've been very careful to not have children out there of my own to support. I don't need to be supporting other people's children.
Okay, let's be careful not to turn this into anime podcast, as would be so easy with the three of us.
Nor should we turn it into a, like, Maury, like, Jerry Springer, like, parental, like, child support podcast.
Yeah, but I will end my contribution to One Piece as a topic in this recording by saying I think Luffy would never, ever pay child support, and if he did, it would just be meat. He would just send a baby, like, a 10-pound, like, cutlet, and he'd be like, that's good, right?
Well,
I fully support this.
To transition away, like One Piece does correlate to, like, as a story to what we're about to talk about, because it's about all these people with really impressive goals, and, like, it's their you see them, like, part of the whole thing is that you see these people on the grind set, like it's the grind set to meet them, to claim the One Piece. So we can learn a bit, but like it is kind of interesting to see that.
Okay,
Good
yeah.
stuff, all right.
I like that transition. It's goal setting.
Harold gave his last bit for One Piece. You gave yours. My last bit will be tying to what we were talking about, which is the fact that I do think that part of what I talked about is absolutely true as far as happiness being tied to a certain like income bracket or intelligence thing. Because I mean, look at dogs and look at people who are wealthy but not rich. They tend to be the happiest. But by far, the happiest are those who are engaged and fully up on One Piece. Which is why I'm sorry to say that Sam will always have just a little bit lacking in his life.
Yeah.
Until
kind of a
those
dead look in
last
his
few
eyes.
moments in which his final words are, "My only regret is that I waited so long to catch up on One Piece." But that is only one aspect of mental health. And as Sam said, like, we need to be talking about goals. So part of like having like achieving goals is just being aware of what they are, man. Like, I think that part of the issue that people have, both mental health wise and just finding themselves in a miasma where they're doing nothing, is not having any idea of what they want. Like, how do you take steps towards what you want when you don't know what that is?
I could not agree more.
I absolutely agree as well.
I've heard that
that's
answer.
Why I need you to tell me, what do I want?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me what I want. That's a much easier question.
No, here's the thing, like,
what do you
you have very clear, like, set goals, but, like, I don't know what to, like, strive towards. Like, what do I want? You guys have been living with me for years. What do I want?
Well, I do know that you want to eat sometimes. Like, you want to eat whole pizza sometimes.
That would be delicious, yes.
You want good food.
Mm-hmm.
You want a big happy family.
Like,
Yay or nay? I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas here.
I mean, happy family, I'm all for. Big depends on your definition. Like,
more than 4 members.
I think I'm pretty much as stereotypical, like, white picket fence 2.5 children as you can get. Yeah.
Did you adopt or something?
I'm just saying, like, that 2.5.
Or you have one out of wedlock.
Well, it's more so like
Big.
Well, it's more like that 0.5 is representative of one that's in a like superposition, where you don't know if you're going to have it until you collapse the superposition. So maybe it's 2,
Jeez, both-
maybe it's 3.
Yes,
my
pregnancy.
My last child will be named Schrodinger, and we'll just see if they come into existence.
Or it's the dog.
Or it's the dog, yeah. But it's something where, you know, these are all, you know, boring, vanilla, stereotypical, like, American dream type things. But, I mean, they're kind of cliche, but I kind of like the cliche. It's like, you know, I also like pizza.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's like, what should I do with my life? Like, what are my dreams and goals? I mean, Harold, we've been, like, living together for a few years, and I know that you have an invention that you've been, like, dedicating time to, but I know even more so than that, what you want to do is have freedom in life in order to pursue your interests, which is why the invention is something that's great. But what's more important to you is that freedom to pursue the things that keep you stable and make you happy. Because the invention is just one avenue to achieve that.
It really is. I'm making inventions so that I could make future inventions. That's always been the goal. I wanted something that would make me more financially stable, that I could, like, roll over the success of into a new project. So yeah, I think you voiced my goals better than I could. Maybe I would be mumbling and fumbling over words, but that's exactly what I want: freedom to pursue interests in like math and science. That's my whole shtick. But figuring out how that works in like a modern economy with adult problems, you know.
Absolutely. And Sam, you want to be able to maintain contentment while still having forward progress in your life. You want to be able to build something while still having some sense of stable happiness. Like, you don't need to build the biggest, like, castle, but you want to feel like you're building towards something.
Absolutely. Like, there's so much stuff I would love to make, but like, it's not that I need like to be super rich. I think you absolutely hit it with that. Not wealthy, but like has enough to take care of myself. It's not. I think enough is similar to Harold. It's like I definitely would like to be able to like be happy and content, but also be able to have the chance to work on a variety of stuff.
Yeah, and so both of you just have this value of like freedom to pursue your interests, which means that you want stability, meaning you have that goal of creating some sort of stability so you have the freedom to move about. But maybe all I want is attention, so I should start an OnlyFans. I mean, why else am I doing a podcast if not to get like attention from people?
Okay, idea. Maybe we need to make an audio version of OnlyFans.
An ASMR OnlyFans?
Exactly. But more than ASMR. You know, I don't want to limit our content to just, you know, taps and clicks in the mic.
Then maybe we just start talking in a lower voice and be like, welcome to our public therapy. Now we're your personal therapy.
We could call
OPT now has two meanings, right?
Yeah, we could call it a that's
Lay
so
it
bad.
out, man.
Okay, sorry in advance to any of our deaf listeners. I'm so sorry, but we could call it Only Deafs. It'd be great because
Would we need to move to a purely visual medium?
you know,
No, but
I'm understanding that we're leaving out an important demographic, and that's people who can't see the content of OnlyFans. How do we target those
Are you
audiences?
asking, because you also brought up, you know, you brought up the deaf and blind community, so are you asking, how do you address a horny Helen Keller?
Yes, how do we bring the modern age of social media and all these websites to those who can't experience it?
Vibrating
in its full
dildos.
I mean, we did have that one chess guy who was allegedly getting all his instructions.
Hey, he beat that case, all right?
Yeah, okay, but
Well, I'm not getting sued here.
I'm saying it all has to do with sensory, and so you double down on the sensory. Vibrating sex toys. We already have a solution. I'm not.
But do
saying,
we tie it to like the audio level in the podcast? Or
I'm not opposed to having merch, but I'm saying that we might be like a few steps removed from that. We need sponsors before we get like adult toy merch.
Okay.
That's probably a season 2 discussion.
Well, in pursuit of this our new dream, we also have to ask the question: are the blind and the deaf ready for what social media is? Are they ready for the crash? For what Twitter? X.
I mean,
has now
to be
become.
honest, I think being blind on Twitter is probably the worst because, like, you have to listen to everything. Like, when I'm scrolling, you can pretty much see the first 3 words and be like, okay, not for me. But I feel like if you had to listen to the whole tweet to really get the context, you'd be consuming more content than necessary.
No, especially that awkward, like, in-between stage of Twitter becoming toxic and voice text not adapting to, like, AI voices. Because there's this in-between spot, because Twitter was just, like, random updates. Like, hey, I'm eating lunch, and then it became toxic. But voice to text became something that's like, I am Microsoft Sam. To then like being able to recreate like the past 3 presidents pretty well.
Yeah.
So instead it would be like all this toxic stuff, but it'd be in a robotic voice, right? So I think that Joe Biden is not a very good president. And then like, shut up your mouth. He is a great president. You should eat a Tide Pod. Sorry, I meant to say pod. So you have that awkward in between step.
Well, I think the voice to text is voice text to speech. That's the word. It's gotten a lot better. So if you want to be insulted in pretty much any voice, you can find it.
Well, also remember, it's all about echo chambers. So if you're in the right echo chamber, you get nothing but positivity. If you're in the wrong echo chamber, you get nothing but toxicity. So it's all about finding that right place where you want to experience just a single extreme with no variance or nuance.
True. But I don't think any of that is really helpful in, I don't think any of that is a goal to have.
That is fair. Like,
Unless your goal is less Twitter.
That is fair. So, I've diagnosed your goals. Now, you need to like tell me for me what my goals are, because obviously the hardest part that I have is like finding out what my goals are. So I need a diagnosis, and then we can start going to the next steps. But what are my goals?
I think your goals is definitely the stable living. It's the, like, I know you've mentioned to me, it's like, hey, I want to have family, I want to have all of that. It's like, I think you also pursue the stable, but I've heard enough from you, even in our off talk of, hey, I want to pursue more writing, more Japanese, more draw. Like, you also have the creative effort. So I actually think you're in a similar boat to us, where like you may have a bit grander sense of what like your stability is, which includes the family, but you also want to be able to create stuff and like support that. I think you're still trying to find like more of what those things are, but like versus Harold and I. But you too want to be able to kind of like have things that you want to like support in the meantime.
All right, we got Sam's contribution, Harold. For step 1, which is finding out what your goals are, what are my goals? So I don't have to figure them out for myself.
Okay.
Your solutions were like, firmly establish what your goals are and be able to like move towards them. My first step is having you guys tell me my goals for me.
Gotcha.
As any healthy person should be able to do.
Yes. Well, I could tell from the way you've posed the question, one of your goals is to do the least amount of work to achieve said goal, which in a way is very respectable and commendable, because the end result's the same. Goal accomplished, right? That's what you all want. It's what all of us want. So does it really matter how much work you put in if the goal is accomplished? So I think put that in there as one of your foundations.
One of my foundations is to delegate every possible task.
Yes.
I like that. So
Outsource.
So from Sam, I learned one of my goals: stability through like some sort of family unit. From Harold, one of my goals: delegate every possible task so I don't have to do it myself.
Minimal effort. Yes.
So this is going to be an awkward conversation with my girlfriend, because it seems like you guys are leading me towards the conclusion of I need to find myself a sugar mama.
Someone who can help you accomplish your goals. Yes.
Well, so far my goals are just stability and not doing any work, and so I just need to be a gold digger. And here are the pros and cons of Sarah. Pro, I love her and I want to be with her. Con, she is not gold diggy material. She could be a gold digger if I was filthy rich, but as a diggy, there are, she's a teacher. She's more about like helping her quote unquote students
and succeed in education. Yeah,
absolutely. And she's an ELL teacher, so she's trying to help quote unquote refugees find some sort of stability and home in this new land that they found themselves in, and helping children like find not only themselves but also an education that can give them a future.
Okay, so
That's terrible gold diggy material.
but I have an idea, a way to make her a better target for gold digging. Okay, she's a
Alright.
teacher.
yeah,
Teachers don't make that much money, but they could in the future with the right changes in education and public policy. So maybe as a sub goal, you change the education system for the better. Get these teachers a retirement plan, 401k, all sorts of benefits, and then you gold dig those benefits.
let me throw something else out that's in line with both of these goals. I need to delegate, but I need to gold dig. So I instead convinced Sarah to make the policy change, and I
Yeah,
Throw it
support
up.
her advocacy.
and I dangle like a healthy long-term relationship as a carrot that will not actually be achieved until she achieves this other goal. Thereby, she becomes wealthy, and then we have a healthy long-term relationship.
I feel like there's a really bad term for that, but I do not know what that is.
It's not gaslighting, because I've been doing that already.
I think it's some form of financial fraud,
Yeah,
allegedly.
It's definitely corruption in some sort of political sense. But regardless, we've now established goals.
Yes.
You guys are trying to find stability to pursue like your interests. I am making sure that I have stability through gold digging. After you recognize what your goals are, because that's absolutely step one.
Yeah, step one.
What is step two?
Make a plan.
All right, making a plan. So, what does that entail?
That entails visualization. That's the key to success in my own experience. Visualize the goal, visualize the process, and every step of the process that you can imagine. Don't get bogged down in the planning, as you said, because you might just be the type of person who feels like that's a job well done. You know, good day's work. I thought of all this stuff I could do tomorrow. But it is part of the process. Got to plan and see yourself at the end. Like, what is it? What is that vision of success? And really get a strong image of it.
Let me ask you two things then. One, can you give an example of a time that visualization has led to your success?
Yes.
Two, I'll ask after.
Okay. So one situation which visualization has been very useful for me is in my days as a competitor in the professional yo-yo scene. So back in my heyday, this is like over 10 years ago, I would like travel the country, sometimes the world, and just be really good with a certain type of toy, basically. And yo-yos were fun for me. I still have like over 50, probably closer to 100 in this apartment. But the thing with yo-yo is it's weird to practice everywhere. And you just kind of don't want to be that guy who busts out the yo-yo at like every opportunity, which I've been that person.
The funeral was a little awkward.
Yeah, I mean,
It was cool at the wedding, though.
luckily the casket was closed, so when the string broke, it just kind of bounced off. But yeah, when you are able to practice a thing without even actually doing the motions, if that's possible for a field that you're in, it's just an invaluable tool. The ability to get better at a craft in literally any situation, any time, any position, it's incredible. And I do credit part of that success in competing, you know, at one point getting to like first in the country, to being able to visualize motions and steps, and like even if you have an idea on a bus, but like you can't stand up and do the thing right there. Use your power of visualization to see, would this even work? Is this idea possible? And yeah, you can sometimes go through an entire yo-yo trick just in your head before you've even tried it in real life.
And I think also to that extent, it doesn't have to be just you. Like, I think in contrast, one of my best things, and I think both of you can vouch, is my visualization is extremely helped with bouncing off like a soundboard, or in a communal sense of like, hey, I can riff because I don't have nearly as much tactile in the things I pursue, but I can riff with someone on, hey, does this work? And it's like, yeah, that does or does not. And as it's a step forward as, okay, here's how to proceed. Like, it still is it's not necessarily hey, we've done it, but like it is the sounding out and the evolution of the thing. So it could be in your head, it could be with someone, but still working to progress, like to take this vague concept and put it into a shape is invaluable.
So when I think of visualization, I was thinking of two ways, and at least in the yo-yo example, I visualized winning tournaments, but I also visualized doing the routines that I do at the tournament. You know, so you might be visualizing individual steps, like tricks, just second by second, or you're visualizing the actual end result of you actually, okay, if it's a prelim, second round, final, you visualize all three of those things going well, going the way that you've seen it 1,000 times in your head. And when that time comes, it's almost familiar. You're like, oh, I've been here. I remember visualizing being in this spot and looking out and seeing people and hearing a countdown. It's like this is not foreign to me, and I think that's another benefit to the visualization.
Let me ask you this then: has visualization ever not paid off? Because I think it can get into the stuff I was talking about earlier, where it's like, you thought about how nice it would be when, I don't know, the patent got approved, and so you thought about it, and that was an excuse to put off some step.
No, I can't say that's ever happened to me. The visualization's never really been a detriment in my experience.
All right, Sam?
I can say there's definitely been sometimes a disconnect. But personal visualization is one, but it is always. But for me, it has been far more helpful because when on certain things, when I'm in a active riffing and like soundboarding with someone, that's part of it is an active. The visualization is getting sharper. There is a progression towards that, and it honestly it can depend on it, but like it really depends on like, is it just kind of all in my head or how much out of it? Because I think it can be better when the communal riffing is also kind of provides a sense of accountability.
So are you saying you might visualize incorrectly? Like, instead of taking input and forming the image from everyone, you're like, oh, this would be cool. I could see it in my head, and that's what we should do.
No, I think in my head it can lead more towards what Joe was saying of like, well, I've kind of formed that, and so I'm good with that. But when I have talks to other people, it's a bit more real because it's not just my idea or it wasn't just formed in my head. It was formed also with them. And so there is a bit more of the accountability, but like, okay, it shouldn't just stop there. Like the ball, like they also help the ball rolling. So there is a bit more reason to keep the ball, to keep things moving. But like,
yeah. And honestly, the way that you describe visualization, Harold, is not the same way I would describe it, because what you were describing reminds me more about like,
Actualization?
or more so just practice, because you talked about like being out on that stage, you imagine what it would be like, you put yourself into a scenario and you worked to like see what that would be like. You're talking about practice, you're talking about doing the work, you're talking about being on that grind set. And so it's not just like visualizing what it's going to be like, it's not just thinking, oh, this would be cool. You're actually talking about putting in that work.
Yeah, I really am. I'm saying that visualization doubling as effort. That's the overlap I
And
see.
that's something I don't disagree with. What I do disagree with is it being step 2. I think that's something that happens a little further down the road, because you need to get some work to get to
Well,
the
you need a
visualization.
plan before you can visualize it.
Absolutely, and so that's where I would disagree. We need to get back to planning, because visualization, as you describe it, is an important part, but it's a later part, right? So we
Right.
need to get back to like, how do you form a plan, right?
So
So,
Okay.
I want to be a gold digger. What do I need to do, like, after I'm like, okay, I
Okay.
recognize that this is something I want in my life. I want to just be a gold digger bum who is a better respected member of society than a live-in boyfriend, but has just as much accountability and responsibility as they do.
Okay, so what I was getting at with visualization is knowing where you are and where you want to go. So I guess in our first step, we figure out what the goal is.
Yeah, we know where we want to go
In the
now.
second step, now you need to know where you are. Maybe that's a better start.
All right.
What do you have? Where? What's your situation?
All right, so
what are you
here's-
working with?
Here's the part that sucks. I have a decent job, which I don't hate, but I need to go and work 5 days a week, and I have a girlfriend who I love, but she's not rich. So rather than just being able to live off of her and not do any work, I have to work. And
And so does
I'm
she.
stuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
It's tough, man.
I know where I want to go, and that's just
Not
bumming
working.
off of her and not
So-
contributing anything. But where I am is contributing to society in my own little way, and just loving a girlfriend who is not able to provide for me like I want her to.
So it sounds like you have a bit of a conflict of interest in your goals, because in order for you to you are working, so in order for her to be so successful enough that you can live off of her, you unfortunately have to work hard to make her work pay off so much more that you could stop working hard.
That might be one of the great ironies in the steps in this process, that you have to, for a time, sacrifice what you want in the short term in order to achieve what you want in the long term. And I think that is probably, if step 1 is recognizing where you want to go, step 2 is recognizing where you are, honestly. Step 3 is being able to, recognize what you're willing to sacrifice to achieve that goal and seeing if that's worthwhile, right? Because for me, I would have to be willing to work hard for a little while in order to make my girlfriend so rich that I don't need to work myself. Am I willing to put in that work in order to achieve that goal? Likewise, for you and Sam, you will have to sacrifice the freedom to do what you want to do in order to have the resources to create greater stability for yourself, right? I mean, you're doing that to some extent with the jobs you have now, but as your ambitions for your different side projects grow, for a time you'll have to sacrifice a greater amount of that freedom in order to then have resources so that way you can dedicate more time to it, right?
Okay, so in one word, step what, 4
Step 3.
is sacrifice.
Yep, step 3 is like kind of that mental preparedness for sacrificing. And I think that's something that ties more directly to the mental health stuff we were hinting at. Because that's something that can be very challenging when you're not in a great mental health place.
Because
is being able to recognize what's worthwhile in the sacrifice and to be willing to recognize that it's worthwhile.
Right. You could be in a kind of stuck position where you're not willing to make sacrifices, but you're also not happy with the position you're in without those sacrifices.
Yeah, like for me,
that would be a pretty depressing
like for me, the
situation.
biggest thing that I would give up in order to like sacrifice the time are YouTube Shorts. And that's really hard to give up because, you know, you flip your finger and then a new one plays, and then you flip it again and a new one plays. And then you flip so much that it starts to replay the stuff you already saw, so you back out, then you go to a new one, and then you get to flip through them again.
Oh yeah, I treat YouTube like a roulette system. Some old guy in Vegas, you know, like scroll through for 80 videos, and then when you get to a point where you're like, these are all boring. Well, I wonder if I go back to the top, things will be different.
Yeah, but remember, we get to act like we're the bourgeoisie, that we're high and mighty because we're not on TikTok. Because it's YouTube Shorts, which is doing the same thing to your brain chemically, but it's got a different label.
Right, it's for the boomers. Which I guess we aren't, but I guess millennial will be the new boomer.
Millennial is to Z as boomer is to millennial.
Basically, we are the boomers now.
No. Remember, there's Gen X before boomer. So,
well, et cetera, et cetera. But, yeah, I do think that sacrifice is something that is essential, but is very hard to understand and being willing to step into when you're not mentally healthy. Like, I know that whenever I've been in a very depressive state, the way that I can improve my life and get out of it and make positive changes has often been by just doing something, stepping out of the negative space I'm in, but is somehow comforting, and just starting to act. But that lazy position I'm in is also comforting when I'm depressed, right? Not doing anything is somehow a comfort, and I need to be willing to sacrifice that, but that's hard to do when you're in a mentally unhealthy place.
Much agreed. Yeah, if you're comfortable in your couch or bed, all cuddled up, watching Netflix or whatever, sacrificing Netflix time for walking time could seem like a lot, especially when the prospect of going outside actually brings about fear or anxiety.
Yeah, though I do think actually going through the steps in order helps out, because that recognition of what you want and what it takes to actually get there from where you are shows you what needs to be sacrificed. And it can be kind of ambiguous if it's just like, yeah, I want to be happy, but I'm kind of sad. But I don't know that I want to be happy, and I don't know what the gap is between. That's hard to then take the first step if I can't recognize those positions first. Though for me, I just kind of don't want to do anything. So maybe, the thing I'm willing to sacrifice is not my own time, but the time of my friends. So all I gotta do is make you two convince Sarah to, petition for teachers to make more money and do radical change in education compensation on a national and state level.
So instead of, you're not even going to delegate us to make the change, you're going to delegate us to convince someone else to make the change.
I mean, one of my goals was just not doing work, and so delegation on delegation.
Okay.
Though I think that brings us to step 4. Once, like, you know where you are, where you want to go, and the gap in between, that's, I think, when you start to make manageable, like, step-by-step, steps.
Yeah, sub-goals. Maybe that's
Sub-goals.
step 4.
A process
yeah.
to achieve that. And I don't even think that you need to make it all the way there. I think that you just need to be able to start with what is realistically achievable for you to do in a set time frame. If that's a day, that's great. If that's a week, that's great. But it needs to be something that is realistically achievable within that time. So, for me, it would be talk to Sam, talk to Harold once a day until they decide to do this for me. That's something I think I can do.
Okay. And
we live together, so it's easy enough to find you once a day and just subtly, like, enter into conversation like, yeah, I just think it'd be really cool if you talked to Sarah about, convincing local and federal governments to give her more money. And then I look at you with puppy dog eyes. Mm-hmm. I think rather than you building a tolerance to it because I'm a grown 30-year-old man, it'll just make you want me to stop so you'll actually, like, cave in.
Because you're a grown 30-year-old man.
Absolutely. I think that there's kind of like what's the opposite of a bell curve where instead of just like one bump in the middle, there are 2 bumps on the extremes?
Bimodal.
I think there's a bimodal curve. It's like if you're super cute, puppy dog eyes work. And if you're just like disgusting, they work as well.
Yeah.
I think at one point in my life when I was like 5, I probably could have been on the cute side. Now, I think I'm on the other side.
Yeah, well, I think if you asked in that way multiple times, I would cave, and eventually, just to get you to shut up, I would talk to Sarah and try to convince her to maybe write a letter to her congressman or woman about, taking care of these teachers, man. I think it'd be great if they could get some sort of like retroactive pay for all the rich people who went through their classrooms. Yeah, imagine that.
Rich people get more pay for having been in
No,
the classroom?
if you become rich and it could be proven in court that the reason you're so successful is due to the efforts of Miss Lambert in 7th grade, then Miss Lambert is entitled to some portion of your wealth.
Oh, well, let me ask you this, because I truly believe that I was done wrong by one specific teacher in 8th grade. We won't name names because I think Mr. Augustus Beam did so in our previous podcast. But she was not necessarily somebody who was a positive influence, but did affect me greatly. So if I'm successful because she was terrible to me, is that something that she would still get compensated? Like, if a student
I think so.
succeeds because of spite,
it has to
for
be
a teacher,
proven, not through whether or not it was like
J.K.
just a
Rowling,
great teacher.
As you can tell in J.K. Rowling's like 5th book, we can tell that her like 3rd grade teacher is the direct inspiration for Dolores Umbridge. She would then get compensated?
No, it'd be more like if she had one teacher and between the year before going into her class and the year after, her writing became significantly improved, and it was due to, provable influence by her. Like, oh, this technique that I use to this day, I learned from this teacher in this year. You'd have to be super specific. It gets into litigation and all this.
I gotcha. Well, let me paint you a scenario. There's little baby Harold Owens in 3rd grade. And let's just say it's Mr. T as the classroom teacher. Mm-hmm. Because I want you to envision the Mr. T with the mohawk in the scenario. And he's just got a ruler. And it's like, what's 8 times 5? 30? And he just smacks you on the back of the head. And he keeps on smacking you the entire year until you can do it at the snap of a finger. Like, what's 8 times 5?
40. And then you still cover your head because you're just conditioned. It's sad.
Yeah. But he made you learn your times tables. Does he get compensation?
After paying for the damages of being an abuser. If there's anything left over, he would.
Okay, that's a completely separate form of litigation. That's a
It would.
different
They would
law
not
altogether.
cancel out for sure. He would end up paying more and beating.
That
students.
would complicate it. That would put it in like limbo for years, and I don't think that I would probably be alive and able to like live off of her compensation by that time. So I need something that's a little bit more
A little more immediate. Okay.
So I need something that's more like, let's just say things that in our previous podcast we would frown upon. Things that are more of the slide you a little something under the table.
So
You scratch my back, I give you a proper like hot sun massage.
No, so what you need to do is then figure out how to delegate other people to lobby to other people to lobby to the lobbyists to then convince the governments.
see, there is a cost to all this delegation. The more middlemen you add, the more people you have to pay and keep track of. You need to find your optimal amount of degrees removed from your girlfriend in this endeavor.
So you're saying that I should instead like start to date on the side somebody who already has a lot of power and just start to, subtly manipulate them?
Only if you have a very passable secret identity. I don't think it would work. I don't advocate for cheating, but if you are technically a different person,
So
I might condone it.
Fun fact that I don't think is official, but I have started to push very hard because of all the Tophers I've met. I do now.
I prefer
firmly believe-
Kiefer. Are you talking about the name?
The names, yes, because Topher is short for Christopher, but it's using the second half.
Then what's Kiefer short for? Chris Kiefer?
No, Kiefer is just like being kind of silly with the name Keith.
Okay.
But I do believe now that if you take your nickname and then cut that off and use the other half of your name, that becomes your hipster name. So, for example, we have here Samuel Parchment. His nickname is Sam. His hipster alternate identity is UL.
Or just Mule.
Or Yule, yeah.
Yule?
No, the M's cut off, so it's Yule. It's Yule or UL, depending on how fancy you want to be. Likewise,
I'm
Harold,
old.
you get shortened to Harry, and so you're just old.
That sucks.
Yeah,
I don't want an old nickname.
Whereas mine, I'm Joe, but my full name is Joseph, so my hipster identity is Seth.
It's Seth, not
Seth, yeah.
Seth. Could I advocate to be like one word removed from old, so like ancient?
Nah.
No.
There is an
Dilapidated?
Nah.
Okay.
That's like taking it a step further. That's like what is a hipster's hipster? That's what that would be. Like
hip
making a
hopster?
change to the general rule.
Okay, I just have to be okay with the worst nickname of the three of us.
It just means your hipster identity kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Which everybody's hipster alternate egos kind of sucks.
Now, there is an alternative. You can delegate to yourself by disassociating and have an entirely alternate identity that's dating someone else.
Counterintuitive, seeing as we're discussing mental health, but if you can bring on a dissociation mentally, you could delegate to that person.
That's fair, but we're also getting way off topic. So let's bring it back. So I think that you do need to make sure that when you're actually making steps towards like whatever that goal is, that you need to make sure that they're actually something that you can take some sort of action for in a reasonable time frame. So let's say that there is a goal that would take you a month to achieve. Or, sorry, let me rephrase that. There's a goal that would take you a year plus to achieve. You have a sub-goal that would take you a month. I think that you need to break that down to something that actually has actionable steps within, like, the day or the weekly time frame, right? So let's take your invention, for instance, and let's just say that you have a brand new one. That might be like a 2-year project. And so maybe your first, like, goal is, well, let's break down what the structure of the hardware for it is going to look like. Well, maybe that's something that's greater than a week-long task. I still think that you need to further break that down into something that has actionable steps that you can take throughout the week, whether that's like every day or whether that's just a few days that week. I really think that in order to properly like achieve a goal, you need to be able to take consistent action with it, because otherwise it's just going to be an idea.
Yeah, it's a underappreciated aspect of planning is just identifying sub goals. How can you break this larger goal that you have down into simpler, achievable steps? And I think you could go overboard with it. So maybe don't do that, where you're just trying to make steps for steps for steps. It's like overwhelming. You'd much rather, like you said, break a year-long goal down into several months-long goals. And then within those, maybe a few week-long ones. But you don't necessarily have to model like or structure your every day and hour to achieve the goal. I think that's something that, Sam, you kind of rail against a bit, trying to have a 10 or 20 minute slot every day to do something. May work for some people, maybe doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
But the spirit of the advice here is to turn big goals into little goals, and I think we could agree on that.
And I think I take a step. It may not even be every day, but it is kind of like those actionable goals. Like you may not do it. Like you may do it in a little bit. You may do it in a lump sum, but you do need to plot that. Like there has to be a point where I think in the final stages it is, this happens Wednesday. This, like, you may not have to say that it's going to happen from at 2 p.m. every single day, but you do have to kind of make the determination, okay, this week, when am I going to find the time to do this part of the goal? Or work on whatever sub goal level I've decided is my actionable step. You'd have to eventually allot the time and say, hey, here's my time, and here's the steps. But yeah, I think once you've broken it down to a point where you can digest the, like, hey, I can do this. It's taking the big and take it into enough where you can say, I can do this. Then that final piece of the step is, okay, I can do this. I will do this here and that here and then doing it. Like once it's in your achievable goal, it's just putting that to the time.
Okay. Then that brings us to step 5, the not sponsored by Nike section, called Simply Do It, to avoid any copyright. Yes. Simply do it. That's step 5. And I know it's not simple, but at some point in all these steps, you do have to take action.
Absolutely. Though I would also throw in a step 6 if it's actually something that you want to achieve, which is keep yourself accountable. Like, let me tell you a story about the before times. And what I mean by that is before Harold was part of the picture and it was just me and Sam living together. Sam, or Ewell as his hipster name is, Ewell wanted to write a chapter of a story he was writing, and he wasn't making much progress with it. And so, to keep him accountable, we gave him consequences. And there was a $1 penalty for every day that he did not write his story. And it ended up costing him quite a lot. Therefore, he actually sat down and wrote it. And I think that giving yourself consequences, making their consequences for yourself, is a great way to achieve success. It's something that I know that the only reason that I've been working out consistently is because I pay for it. And so if I don't go, I'm like, I'm wasting a lot of money.
Yeah.
Or even like, this is part of both The Art of War, the book, as well as many different historical points I can point to. Specifically, Julius Caesar burning his ships to prevent his troops from like going back. You kind of have to give yourself some sort of consequence, so that way if you back out or don't go forward, you suffer for it. There's some sort of consequence for not committing to whatever it is that you want to achieve.
I wouldn't say like every single person has to say I'm gonna do that, but I think that's a fantastic. It's not necessarily step 6; it's step 5B. Like, simply do it, 5B, or else.
Absolutely. Like, the simply do it, like, that's something that I disagree with entirely. Like, that's something that we have a difference of opinion on. Because I've too often seen people go through this process being able to say, I have the goals, and then they just need to do it. But then they don't. Myself included. I mean, because, if you don't do it, what's the difference? I think that you need to give yourself some sort of consequences.
Yeah, the accountability is also part of a process of reflection, right? Like, at the beginning, you were saying, what do I want and where am I? You know, what do I even have at my disposal? What could I sacrifice? But then towards the end, you're asking different questions like, how far have I come? What have I accomplished? What still needs to be done? Those kind of questions you can't really ask if you're the type of person to like kind of just give a little half effort and, call it a day. So yeah, if you never come back to that and really analyze that process of reaching your goal, then yeah, I don't think you can just end with just do it, because you might have done a crap job of it and then you never look. You never actually see if you could have done better or if you've actually succeeded in doing what you set out to do. So totally agree. You can't end at the step just do it. There's definitely more. Either an addendum that says or else, or some follow-up that's about now analyzing what you've accomplished already.
Yeah, I definitely can agree with that. So Joe, what's to stop you from just simply being a responsible adult?
That's in direct contrast with the stated goals that you guys have created for me.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Instead of like, what is your consequence? What is your reason to continue?
Well, I like the burning of the boats analogy. You could take that literally and just set something on fire. Allegedly. Can you just say that? I just say that to, never get in trouble.
So
you punch someone in the face, you walk away.
Here's the thing.
Allegedly.
What I could do, in theory, is quit my job in some way that's very public and very drastic and burns every bridge that I could think of. So, I could urinate on my boss's desk on camera and be just completely unemployable, meaning that I need to find an alternative source of income. So I either start my own business and achieve some sort of sustainable success, B, find some way to achieve these goals and make my girlfriend successful, or C, just kind of bum it, and eventually die. So, I mean, I still have options there, but the one that's most in line with my goals at that point is like option B.
Yeah, the self-sabotage before attempting the goal, counterproductive. You can nix that from the plan.
Wait, why would I do that? It's consequences that makes me need to achieve my goal.
Yeah, but you have to like get to the battlefield and then burn your ships. Don't burn your ships before you even gotten to where you're supposed to go, right? Like if the reason he burned the ships is so people couldn't go back and like
yeah, but he burned them well
commit.
before the battlefield. They still had to like establish camps and do all this stuff.
Yeah, but they at least made the trek. They did this journey on ships.
I know the trek was recognizing what your goals are. He brought them to like recognize what their goal was, which is conquer this land. Then he gave them no way back.
I would say no. That wasn't the goal. Like because he started his goal of conquering before they ever left port. The first part of it was, okay, we're gonna have to conquer it. Part of the steps to take was, you gotta cross the boat. But like once
cross the boat.
Cross the sea to get
the boat while the boat crosses the sea.
Yeah,
you're both right.
But yeah, like you have to like the ship burnt came once he'd already gone enough. Like there was a point of, well, I have to keep myself accountable, so I'm going to burn the ship. But the getting to there was part of the initial plan, and then he kept himself accountable by burning the ship.
I mean, I've talked to you guys about it, so I feel good just like quitting my job and like making an ass of myself. I think that's the way to go.
Okay, well, let it be known I did not suggest that you pee on your boss's desk. But if that gets you to the next step in achieving your goals, then so be it.
Now, conversely, you delegate to your boss to help to get your girlfriend, because he's in a higher position of power. So while you have your position of power, you delegate to all the people you know to get the change done, so that they work on it. And then, as well as your girlfriend, so you get a bunch of people to work on the same task. And that way you're not burning any bridges, but you also are making it work much faster.
These are all good ideas, okay? And our listeners can pick and choose what works for them. I know we suggested some sensible solutions and some ill-advised ones. But, you're your own person. You can choose to do what you want. And just keep that in mind, that you can choose. Sometimes recognizing that is all you need. You do have choices. So this has been a special episode with our guest, Sam Parchman, coming on to this session of our public therapy. I feel therapeutiated. It's a word, and I made it up. We post these every other Monday. On the Mondays where we don't have a main episode of our session, we have a bonus episode called The Check-In, where we just kind of sit on a couch and spew the most concerning things in our lives to try to address them, get better. Our most recent one was about dreams and what do they mean? How do you interpret them better? Check that one out. Until next time, thanks for tuning in.